Hello, guys. So, you know that whole counterpicking thing that we've been complaining about for like the last 6 seasons or whatever it is, right? You would think that eventually the devs would catch on and say, you know what, dude, maybe this whole counter swapping thing, people aren't liking it so much. But no. Instead, the season 11 mid-season patch that occurred so early into the season that it wasn't a mid-season patch because so many people had quit the game because of how bad it was, they decided that they would instead make the game worse and exacerbate the counterpicking issue into the moon. Which is just fantastic, because once you have a problem, the best solution to that problem is, of course, making it a bigger problem. Everyone knows that. So, now, playing on my main account has gone from being not super fun and pretty counterpick heavy, kind of boring in general, kind of just playing the meta comp, to now the same thing but cranked to a ludicrously large degree, because I don't think the devs really noticed this or realized this, but when you make all the tanks stronger, all the tanks' niches and power levels in whatever category that they own. For example, Zarya would have the beam category or something like that, and the bubbles, for example, that are difficult to deal with by certain characters. You would kind of assume the devs would kind of understand this, that when you buff all the tanks, you just make the disparity larger. And with a larger disparity between those things, the more exacerbated and prominent the counterpicking would be. Because now, instead of, for example, let's say the Zarya Diva matchup, instead of that being what it was before, where it was still kind of possible to pick Zarya into Diva to some degree. Now instead, because Zarya is so much better and Diva is so much better, it means that the counterpicking goes harder because the Zarya is stronger, which means she's going to destroy the Diva more than she did before, which means that the counterpicking is stronger than it was before, which is not good. You know what I mean? Like, the Diva now has less opportunity to play Diva because Zarya is stronger. Which then would mean that the Zarya player is more incentivized to counter swap than they were before, because it's easier. And it seems like we're going backwards, because if you really wanted to fix the counterpicking issue and the things like that, well, there are two solutions. Well, there's probably more, but there's two main ones. And it would likely be that you either make the tanks weaker, which sounds counterproductive, but I'll explain it in a second. So you either make the tanks weaker, or you rework them all so that none of them have a counter, which would be a lot of work. Or you just go back to 6v6, that would solve it. But the reason you would make the tanks weaker is because if the tanks are weaker, this disparity between their niches or their power levels in terms of what they're good at, for example, Zarya having beam and obviously Diva being susceptible to those, would grow smaller because they are both inherently weaker, which means they would do less to each other, which means that the counterpicking wouldn't be as bad, which is specifically why the counterpicking wasn't as bad in Overwatch 1, because the tanks weren't as strong. So you didn't need to, because the potential that you would get out of the counterpick was so small that it wasn't worth it in a lot of cases, unless you were in like a super high ranking lobby where you need that slight edge. But now, because there's only one tank, the tank needs to be stronger to function. But if it's stronger to function, that means it's also more susceptible to getting countered, because then you're, instead of dumping all of your utility and damage into two tanks, where they could potentially swap their comp up a little bit to mitigate a little better, because there's two of them, you now have a situation where there is only one tank. And because that one tank is stuck being that one singular tank, they are susceptible to what they are susceptible to, with absolutely no form of potential mitigation away from it, due to the fact that they are what they are, and they're going to suffer from what they suffer from by the design of the character. Which means that they're easy to counterpick, which is a problem. So, here's the thing, is anyone who supports 5v5 would also inherently have to support the fact that counterpicking will always happen, and it's not fixable in this format. Which is fine if you're okay with 5v5 and you're also okay with that. For example, Jake is someone like that, where Jake loves 5v5, but he also loves counterpicking. Which, I'm sorry, it's just objectively a terrible take, but it is what it is. Like, he can believe whatever the fuck he wants, I don't care. But he likes counterpicking, so that explains why he likes 5v5 more. It's fair enough. But there's a lot of people that like 5v5 and are like, dude, 5v5 is the future, 5v5 is the better format, the game is better like this, and then also in the same sentence talks about how counterpicking is really problematic for the game and needs to be fixed. And I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, that's not really possible in this format, unless you want to nerf the tanks back down to being kind of like their original power level, so that they didn't fuck each other so hard. Because I'm yawning. Because the thing is the main issue with the counterpicking is the tank on tank matchup. Now, it may seem like other things, like for example, if you're going like, I don't know, let's say like fucking Hog or something. Even I hate Hog, but let's say you go Hog, like you just lose to poke immediately, like by default. Like if they got a Larry Bap, Hanzo, Ash, Sigma, like you just die. You can't really do anything. You just lose by default on Hog there. So, although the counterpicking issue is as bad as it is, the fact that the tank is as strong as it is the reason for that. And it seems as though people don't really understand that when you increase the power level of the tank, you are inherently increasing how dangerous they are, which means you're increasing how focused they need to be. So with a stronger tank, although you may be playing an objectively stronger character, you're gonna have a worse time because you have to be focused down even more to be dealt with. In the earlier seasons where tank was not very strong, the game was way more fun to play because no longer did I go Rhine and then they immediately go Bastion, Mei, Ana, and things like that where I just fall over if I drop my shield. They would instead just accept that I picked Rhine and they would continue playing the game. Now that may just be because the game has evolved over time and people have learned that counterpicking is strong in this game, and perhaps they would have done the same back then had they known counterpicking was as strong as it was. However, counterpicking has been a thing since Overwatch 1, so I would still be inclined to say that people were willing to do it back then. They just didn't feel like they had to because the tanks weren't that powerful. But now that they are, you're kind of required to. Because the devs have kind of noticed that people hate playing tank. Okay, well the solution to this would be to crank the power levels of the tank. Well, now that the tank is stronger, they get focused more. Okay, well we're gonna make them even stronger to deal with all the focus. Okay, well they're stronger, so they're gonna get focused even more than before. But we gotta keep buffing them. And then eventually we're going to get to the point where the tank is so ludicrously overpowered, which is, by the way, right now, that they are awful to play against and ruin the experience for every other role, which they do. But not only do they do that, they are also having a horrible time, because unless you hard focus the tank down, you lose because of how strong they are. So Blizzard has forced the tank players into a position where they need to be focused, otherwise they just run the lobby. And if they run the lobby, then no one has any fun. But as soon as you counterpick the tank, then the tank doesn't have fun, and neither does anyone else. Because, for example, let's say I want to play Genji, and the enemy team has, like, Ramatra. Well, I'm never going to do anything to Ramatra as Genji. It's just never going to happen, right? So we're all playing, and he's just, like, destroying us. Like, my team is on Rhine. We're getting rolled. So I have two choices. Either stay on Genji and have a miserable time because I'm never going to do anything on my terrible hero, especially against Ram, or I decide to go Bastion and win the game, but still have a terrible time. So, and the Ram also has the choice to accept that he's going to have a terrible time against the Bastion, or he can counterpick my tank and make my tank miserable. So either way, someone is miserable. I don't understand how the solution to this problem was, oh, everyone feels like shit? Well, let's make everyone feel more like shit. Because that's exactly what we needed. We've had nothing but complaining for the last 6 seasons of, hey, tank is really strong, but it sucks to play. And their solution was, alright, we'll make it worse to play then. I don't know, like, they clearly have absolutely no idea what they're doing. The devs are, listen, I don't want to be mean, but they are incompetent. They are actually idiots. I'm sorry. I don't understand how they weren't able to evaluate this when they were doing the patch. It seems like nothing they do comes with any intent behind it, like, for actually fixing an issue. They just seem to decide that, well, you know what? Tanks are having a bad time. That means we gotta buff the tanks, right? But that's clearly not their balance philosophy, because if it was, then we wouldn't have heroes in the game like Hanzo and Genji, who are so bad that they're borderlining on a complete throw pick. But then you have characters like D.Va, who are absolutely annihilating the rank ladder, and were just levels of broken that were completely incomprehensible due to her broken defense matrix was, and how much armor she had, and they decided in the patch that they would buff her. It doesn't make sense. Like, you can't have a character like Genji in the same game as like Pharah. These characters are not on the same level. Like, there's such a large disparity between them in terms of their power level that having them in the same game just doesn't do it. It just physically does not work. You need these characters to be on at least a similar power level for them to have a decent exchange. But because we have characters in the game like Pharah, like McCree, like Widow, like these broken characters, there's just nothing some characters can do against them because they are inherently overpowered, whether that be stat-wise or kit-wise or whatever it may be. But you can't have a game where you have a character like D.Va and you have a character like Zarya. It's never going to work because D.Va just gets shit on by Zarya inherently. That's D.Va's flaw, is what Zarya is. She is weak to that. But having them both in the same game obviously doesn't work, because if you pick one, someone will obviously pick the other, which then ruins the experience. Like, I don't see how the devs can't see this. This is so blatantly obvious, but they just seem to not care at all, or it's like they're almost doing it on purpose. So I just don't get it. Like, playing on my main account is physically impossible on tank. It's not fun at all. I go Ram, well, they're on Mauga. Okay, well, I want to deal with the Mauga, so I'm, maybe I'll go Zarya. Okay, well, now I'm on Zarya. Okay, well, now they're on Ryan. Okay, well, they're on Ryan, so I'm gonna go Monkey. Okay, well, I'm on Monkey, so now they're on D.Va. Well, they're on D.Va, so I'm going Zarya. Okay, well, I'm on Zarya now, so they're on Sigma. Oh, well, they're on Sigma, so I'm gonna go Ram. Oh, he's on Ram, I'm going Mauga. It's like, what is this? We're not even playing Overwatch anymore. This is not fun. No, like, there's no expression of skill happening here at all. Like, there's two people in a certain rank, okay? For example, you might be in a certain rank because you're genuinely that skill level and you deserve it. And you might be able to play a wide variety of heroes, or maybe just one hero to that skill level, and they've taken you to that rank. And then there's the players who decide, you know what, dude? At every opportunity that is given to me, I am going to counter swap. And they get mega inflated in rank because obviously, and then sometimes I'll get them on my team and they're just terrible. Like, the amount of times I'll be queuing on my main account, I'll queue into top 50, and I'll go against some GM 5-stack, which is so dumb, by the way. You shouldn't be able to queue into 5 stacks as a solo queue, even if they're narrow queue. That shit is retarded. That doesn't make any sense. But I'll queue against a 5-stack, who are all willing to counter swap, and then my tank player might be one of those counter swapping weirdos who's actually just inherently bad at the game but is really good at counter swapping, and they manage to go against someone who's genuinely good at tank, and it doesn't matter how much counter swapping you do, buddy, you fucking lost because you're bad. So people are hyperinflated in rank because they're willing to counter swap. The people unwilling to counter swap are deflated in rank to the point where they're basically pseudo or borderline smurfing every game, because if they don't counter swap, they lose. Like, Grandmaster is full of no names, dude. The amount of GM1/low champ games I'm queuing into, where the average might be champ 4 to GM2 or something, and I don't recognize a single fucking player in the lobby, but they're all counter swapping, is nuts. The rank system is broken with the counter swapping. It ruins the game. Like, I'll be lucky to queue into top 500 and recognize someone that doesn't counter swap at every given opportunity. This shit sucks, dude. No one likes playing as this. And it's not just the tank role that sucks, it's every single role is affected by this. So the way you fix this is you nerf the shit out of all of the tanks, nerf them all, or you go back to 6v6. Now, it may seem dumb, but I promise you, nerfing the tanks will absolutely fix the counter picking issue. Now, tank might still suck to play, but that's, you know, it's going to make everyone else's life better, you know? Like, I don't think you should ruin 4 DPS players' lives, 4 support players' lives, and potentially another tank player's life, because, like, all the stats are cranked to the moon. That is so dumb. I'd rather play tank and my tank be weak than play tank and my tank be strong. Because at least with a weak tank, I've remotely some playmaking ability, because I'm not getting hard focused. But as soon as my tank character is strong, they do nothing but shoot me all day, and it's awful. Anyway, this is probably the worst season in Overwatch history, if I'm being honest. Double Shield was better than this, Break Release was better than this, Goats was better than this, Quad Tank was better than this, everything, but this is as bad as it gets. This is terrible. The game has been on a slow decline ever since. Like, I'm having a really hard time. Like, the uploads, I'm barely uploading now because the game is just bad, bro. Like, I don't know what I would make a video about. It's so bad. It's so boring. There's no passion or love left in this game. I'm trying my absolute hardest to remain in love with the game like I have for so many years, but the game is so close to committing actual suicide that I'm like almost forcing myself to try and enjoy it, and it's not working. The game is bad, bro. It's real bad. The only thing keeping this together for me is the fact that I smurf a lot. If I didn't smurf a lot, dude, I think I'd be done, bro. Anyway, goodbye, guys. I love all of you. Mwah. Goodbye. Goodbye. Mwah. Mwah. Mwah.